Today we're going to answer a question, which is better for you, the DJI Action 4 or the DJI Action 5 Pro? In this video, I'm going to be comparing these cameras, comparing the differences, what's alike, and let's get started with the basics. Both cameras do 4K 120, both cameras do 1080 240. The DJI Action 5 Pro actually does even slower motion up to 960. However, it is interpolated. And maybe why this is considered a pro camera is because the recording times. The DJI Action 4, I believe, does 160 minutes compared to 240 minutes. So that's almost 3 hours versus 4 hours. Okay, there's other differences. The DJI Action 4 does one internal mic. The DJI Action 5 does two internal mics. So that might make it more pro. Color recovery. If you're recording in 10-bit D-Log-M, there is a color recovery mode, aka LUT overlay. It's just a basic way of colorizing your footage, how you see it on the back of the screen, not necessarily how it comes into your editor. But at least you can see what it looks like, what you should expect it to look like instead of a gray image. The DJI Action 5 does subject tracking. However, it's just a crop, so you have to lower your resolution to make that happen. In theory, you can just do this in post. The DJI Action 5 Pro goes a little bit deeper underwater. Both are fairly deep. I believe 18 versus 22 meters. That's more than what most normal humans can handle, right? And the DJI 5 has a pressure monitor, so you can monitor how deep and how much pressure it is before you perish. The DJI Action 5 Pro has 47 gigabytes of internal storage, and that might be enough for you. It's a good amount of recording in 4K, and if you're only recording 1080, it's even further. And lastly, the DJI Action 5 Pro has live photos, which is good for absolutely nothing. We're going to have a look at both cameras side by side with their default profile. Nothing adjusted here. This is what you can expect straight out of camera. So on the left is the Action 5, on the right is the Action 4, and you can see that the Action 5 does slightly better in this scenario. Of course, the colors are going to be different, but there's a little bit of jitter with Action 4. The Action 5 is a bit smoother. And here again, we're going to test the sport mode. Okay, and the sport mode on the Action 5, it's good. I mean, there's not much of a difference, to be honest. The default mode looks plenty steady. It's a little bit better than the Action 4, but you're not going to see huge differences here. They're fairly good at what they do as action cameras. Both of them are pretty good. Are you able to spot the differences with the bit rate? The Action 4 theoretically has a higher bit rate than the Action 5. Can you see a difference? Moving on, we're going to have a look at how it works in a less forgiving day, like an overcast day. All right. Left is Action 5, right is Action 4, and they give slightly different looks. Neither of them look particularly well. However, it is a overcast day. It's just not going to look great. What the Action 5 does differently, maybe not necessarily better, is that it does reveal a little bit more shadow information. Everything's more flattened out, and in the dark areas, the Action 4 it can get a little bit darker. I mean, there's no clear-cut winner, but I do think the Action 4 does look better in this scenario. This is just straight out of camera, so take that into consideration. It's not particularly well on both cameras. They kind of look like a smartphone looking like shot. The unflattering light isn't going to help with an unflattering subject. Okay, so moving on. So this is where it gets difficult for both cameras on their default settings. And you'll notice that the Action 5 is a better image. However, it has more jitter. However, you can see what's going on, I think. The Action 5, what's going on is that it's more stable. The The Action 4 is less stable, however, the motion is natural and it doesn't have the jitter because it doesn't have to correct as much. The electronic stabilization doesn't work as much. And there's a way to correct that. And I'll get to it in a second. Let's look at it with skin tones, and you can see that the Action 5 is just quite a bit better. This is default. There's nothing going on here. This is what you can expect straight from the camera. The Action 5 is just where it's at. It's just much better, okay? So moving on. Super night mode versus Action 4 low light mode. So super night mode is a considerably brighter image for the Action 5. It's cheating, it's AI, whatever you call it, it simply looks better. However, it does not get rid of the jitters. It does look like maybe there might be less than the Action 4 in this particular scenario, but to get rid of the jitter in a more controlled way, you're going to need to adjust the shutter speed. You'll need faster shutter speeds because electronic stabilization needs to have faster shutter speeds. So I'm going to adjust this to 1/100th minimum. The default is 1/30th. So 1/100th means that there's quite a bit less light. All right. Here they are side by side. Once again, 1/100th on both cameras. You can see that the jitter effect has gone down. It's not away though. Okay, you cannot make it disappear with this type of shutter speeds. You'll need higher shutter speeds to completely get rid of it. But as you can see, the camera is being starved of light. It might not even be usable from what you can see. The Action 4 is definitely not usable at this point. However, the Action 5, this might be good enough for you. This might be a permanent setting that you change for your camera. Here it is with 1/200, and it is just poor at this point. It's just too dark. You're starving away too much light. This sensor cannot handle that. Noise reduction is not working. However, there is no jitter effect, but the image is completely garbage as well. And it just is not acceptable as a vlogging camera at this point. So if you're in daylight, you can mitigate all of the vibrations just by pumping it down to 1/200th of a shutter speed at minimum. You can get rid of jitter. However, you also get rid of much of the light, which might be practical for daytime, which I'll be testing here. This is moving to the image quality. Okay, D log M. And I will be applying a LUT to it, and it will look much better. This is golden hour, and both cameras look great. It should. It's the lighting. And there's not too much difference. In the shadows, you can see that the Action 4 looks a little bit different than the Action 5. However, it's not a huge difference. It's just something that the Action 5 does differently to the Action 4. And you can see a little bit later on the differences more clearly in the dynamic range test. Moving on, I'm going to touch on briefly is the dynamic range. I don't have charts. However, if you're looking for dynamic range, you want D log M. And this is both cameras with D log M in a driving scenario. And this is just going to be a brief little situation where I'm driving. I'm going to show you dynamic range. D log M looks a little bit more brighter. However, it behaves differently on the 5 and 4. And it's not so straightforward. And I'll get back to this in a little bit. But for the image quality of D log M in more lower light, this is going to be indoors D log M. Here's a LUT. Okay, so there's a different look to it. They're not the same. So if you have these two cameras and you're doing A/B shots, your color is going to be slightly different. The look is going to be slightly different. The Action 5 pulls more of the shadow areas in this scenario, but it's not always guaranteed. You can see the Action 5 just got darker in this area than the Action 4, and it just behaves overall a little different. There's no straightforward answers between these cameras. The Action 4 does try to expose more for the whole image in this scenario, while the Action 5 looks like it's always trying to preserve the highlights. And this is useful for high dynamic scenarios. And going back to that subject, you can see that there is more dynamic range with the Action 5. Here it is with another look. Action 5, Action 4, D-Log-M. You can see the Action 5 is just a more rangy tool. Okay, the colors are a bit better in this scenario. And it's able to decipher, this is a foreground that's lit, and then I'm going to change it to the background being lit right here. And you can see the Action 5 just has a better job of figuring it out, because with the wide angle, it's easy to capture a very wide scene. The camera needs to know the difference between averaging, when you should average, versus preserving highlights. And you can argue that the Action 5 does better in this scenario. Moving back to artificial lighting, this is where the Action 5 does a little bit better, in my opinion. It seems to be handling the noise better, even though the Action 4 looks plenty good in this scenario as well. This is what you can expect from the $50 upgrade. The images are just a little bit better, even if it's computer generated AI. I'm not sure what DJI is doing, considering both cameras have the same sensor size. However, there is processing. I like that I can actually see what's going on in the blacks. However, you can argue that the Action 4 has more pleasing color science, and that is just my opinion. Of course, these action cameras do have one thing that does annoy me, and that is the reach. It's like an Asian trying to reach the top cabinet. It is difficult to get in closer with action cameras. And you can see here, this is one of the problems of just having an action camera. As a vlogging camera, you are a bit limited in what you can get close to. And when it comes to lower light and more static type shots, D-Log-M and the Action 4, the Action 5, it can work well. I think it works great if you're okay with the ultra wide style of look. Indoors, it's always a concern that there's going to be too much noise, but in this type of scenario where you're just sitting down, even with 1/100th, both video footage looks great. And having looked through the footage, 1/100 looks okay for indoors. The bigger question is that, can you use 1/100th all the time? Can you use it? Is there going to be shake? And I think the shake indoors is low to minimum, and that's because 1/100th does work to a certain degree. So in these tests, I just want to test out how practical it is to leave in that setting. The Action 5 does seem to draw a whole lot more light. It's more pleasing because of that. It's not so dark of an image compared to the Action 4. And lowering the shutter speed doesn't mean that you'll have introduced more problems with image quality. And I just don't see that to be the case. You can use this as your full-time setting, and it's a compromised setting that may introduce more noise. However, it will give you more stable footage. EIS has more to work with. There's going to be less jitters. All right, let's talk about this device. And the most important thing I feel is that the Action 5, which is this one, has a much better battery life. When I was doing these tests, all of this recording, the Action 5 had a remaining 81% battery life compared to 46% of the Action 4. That is a significant difference in battery life. So that is going to be the main difference between these two devices, and that alone might be enough of a reason why you should get the Action 5 over the 4. Because the battery is going to cost you like $30. You're only $20 away from this device. I mean, there's only, if you factor in an extra battery, that's literally how much it costs in difference. Another thing that might be apparent right now is that
this screen is unusually bright. It's brighter than any screen on any device. It displays something that is not really what your eye is seeing. It's even brighter than that. And for practical purposes, that's great. I don't see a problem with that. If you want more lifelike, then maybe the Action 4 will be it for you. But really, you want something nice and easy to see, especially if you're getting up there in age where your eyes aren't that great anymore. Then the Action 5 definitely is the one for you. Okay, so battery life, the screen is larger. However, the downsides or the advantage for the Action 4 is this little LCD. There's no LCD on the Action 5, or LED. Sorry about that. And that's kind of nice. I like it because if you have your screen set to turn off when you're recording, like I do right now, so I'm going to record it and it's going to turn off in 3 seconds because I like to preserve battery, then this one is completely off. The front shows nothing, back shows nothing. There's LEDs here though. I kind of like that ability just to have the LEDs blink like that. Even with the Action 4, you can turn off those LEDs if you want to. If you don't want anybody noticing that you're recording, boom, it's gone. However, back to the Action 4, it has something that may not be noticeable right away, but the screen is actually larger. Okay, so the screen here pulls all the way towards the edge. Here, there's a lot of space that's not used, and maybe it's for that LED. I'm not sure. Another thing that's different is that they don't have completely the same settings. Okay, maybe in this Pro mode, but when I turn it off, there's still 4 items to adjust, and if I'm using this as a basic beginner, 4 items is kind of overwhelming. Okay, so this is more simplistic, the Pro model, and you could turn it on to Pro, and when it's on Pro mode, it has just as many options. Actually, it has 1 less. Okay, there you go. And there's another thing with the screen. Okay, so I'm not sure if you can change this. However, you can see that this one is zoomed in. However, the Action 4 has the entire view, but it's really small. So that's just a small thing on how they change the different displays on the front monitor. Other than that, they're almost identical in size. I believe the Action 5 is a tad larger, maybe by a millimeter or half a millimeter. It's quite small. Both of them charge fast. However, the Action 5 will give you a numeric charge number, while this one has a flashing LED that just goes quick and quicker. The front lens, they are kind of the same. The Action 5 has this red ring, which is nice and cool looking. However, I'm not a fan of either one of them having the word Action here. I do like that they get rid of that DJI logo right here, because it's wasted space. Look, they regain the space on the small screen right here, and so there's no space for a logo. And as for this Action, this thing is kind of bright and easy to see, and I'm just not a fan of in-your-face camera branding. Okay, as you can see right here, my magnetic clips, they have a branding, and I had to use a marker to color it out. I don't really want to use a marker here and accidentally cover the white balance sensors right here. Both of them have that here. The Action 5 has a larger white balance sensor. On the top, the speaker layout slightly different. There's 8 holes here, 4 holes here. Other than that, everything is similar. Bigger buttons on the Action 5. The top record button is larger. So if you're looking from top down, you can tell which device is which after seeing it for a while. So if you're looking into a bag, they're top down. You know which one's a 5, which one's a 4. other than that, 20 meters underwater versus 18. I mean, if I'm 3 meters underwater, I'm probably dead. Okay, as for the battery, there's a visual difference between them. Okay, this one doesn't show anything. The newer battery has a large 1950 mAh. Okay, something about the menu, in that when you go to the video or modes, let's see. Okay, there's different modes here. There's a starry night, and this one there's a slow motion, time lapse. Okay, so getting into the low light, you have to go to super night mode. There you go. And okay, so that's that. Just a couple extra ones. Okay, so subject tracking mode. Let's just say you're doing 1080 or 2.7K. Because you can't record at the full resolution, it's gonna crop. That's just how it works. Okay, so with subject tracking, let's say I'm here like this. Okay, where's the subject? There we go. Okay, and now subject tracking is on. Following my hand, but you see the camera is sitting still and the footage is moving. It's a large crop. You could do it in post, or the camera automatically does it for you.
Final thoughts, as someone who loves action cameras, whose life is not action filled, the DJI Action 5 has a significant low light advantage. It has a significant battery advantage. It has built-in memory. And if you consider all of that for a price difference of $50, if you're buying new, this is a no-brainer. The DJI Action 5 Pro is the one. It's only $50 more. It has the bigger battery. It can support 2 mics. It has much better low light abilities. I mean, that's a significant upgrade in my opinion compared to the Action 4. Just getting upgraded low light abilities in anything with microscopic levels of sensor size, that's kind of amazing because they're the exact same size. So whatever DJI is doing to cheat physics, that's on them. Do I care as an end user how they got there with magic or AI or Chinese technology? No, I really don't. I just care that it's there. It's good. It's amazing kind of for the size of the sensor. The sensor is, and the wide angle, it's what the iPhone wide angle should have been. Maybe if you have the Action 4 already, then it's not worth it to get the Action 5. Yeah, a case can be made for that. You could always use it as a second camera. This is my own Action 4. I don't plan on getting rid of it just so I can have dual Action 5 cameras. It'd be nice, okay, if all the footage matched, but it doesn't. Oh, well, I could get it close enough. No one's really going to care about my trash home videos. Action cameras, they're just so great to have around. They're not intimidating. People view them as toys. And it's great to have something that's kind of worry-free. You don't have to worry about this thing getting damaged. You don't have to worry about it attracting the wrong type of folks or law enforcement harassing you or people harassing you. It's just an action camera. It's not going to make people nervous when you have one on. And really, the Action 5 is just really good compared to the 4. And I always thought that the Action 4 was quite good. The battery life, for me, I mean, action cameras with over 2.5 hours of battery life, it's kind of amazing, to be honest. But this one now with like a 4-hour battery that just lasts forever, it's really, really nice. And being able to now use both mics at the same time, being able to store video footage on the device itself, and even if you lose your SD card or you get one damaged or just corruption happens, you have the internal storage. And I guess that's what makes it pro. It is what it is. That's not my opinion of it. But it's just great that everything is inside and everything works just so well. Anyhow, that's all I got for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to like, subscribe, share. See you in the next one. Take care.